Welcome to Accounting High.
We need to first understand what is the value of one customer, and not just like the one-time value, but the actual lifetime value of a customer. So Scott, for you and I, for our business, we have recurring revenue, right? So let's say we close a new client for $1,000 a month. And on average, our clients stay with us for 2 years. So that would be, what would be the lifetime revenue of that client?
24,000.
24,000. Okay, so then the question is how much are we willing to spend in order to get $24,000 in revenue?
Check out the cash flow show. We discuss topics like getting paid on time, profitability, and managing your bottom line, payroll best practices, the best apps to use, and cash flow forecasting tools. So if you're a small business owner, your help's right around the corner. Fret not. Tune in as Scott and Nikole help you reach your goals on the cash flow show. The cash flow show. Listen and learn. We'll show you how to pay yourself on what your business earns. With Nikole and OKR.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us, students. What's up, Nikole?
What's up, Scotty? I'm laughing right now because Mike got a Target ad on Instagram for this cat bed / scratcher, and there's definitely like hidden catnip in it. My cat's going crazy over there.
Okay. So your cat is going crazy over a new catnip scratcher. Catnip
Yeah.
bed scratcher. That's awesome. So I was going to ask our listeners to go open their podcast player, or if they're in YouTube, to subscribe. Make sure that they're subscribing to us in their podcast player. Leave us a review too, if you don't mind. We got a review, Nikole. I was going to read it for our listeners. While they're typing up and leaving their review, I'm going to go ahead and read this too. This is from Dot621. Good show, informative. I really like this concept. It's helping me as a business owner. Sometimes it's like there's nowhere to turn to get answers. I'm enjoying listening to each show and learning as I go. Looking forward to new shows as they download. I need all the help I can get as a business owner. That was awesome. Thank you.
That was great.
Dot621. And listeners, if you've been listening, make sure you subscribe, leave us a review. Today's topic, near and dear to both of our hearts, we're going to talk about marketing spend. We're going to talk about spending money on marketing and what's enough, what's too much.
Yeah, this is a good one. I wasted a lot of money on marketing. I've spent a lot of time figuring it out, and I actually used to really hate marketing. And now actually it's one of my favorite things to do. So I'm excited to talk about this. And I think as accountants, a lot of the time our clients are looking to us to answer these questions. How much should I spend on marketing? And a lot of times accountants will go through your profit and loss statement and just look at the largest spend and say, well, here, cut on this expense. But marketing is one of those, it's not as clear cut as, say, spending money on IT or accounting, because marketing can actually be an investment in your business. And so we want to go through kind of the different types of marketing options that you have, and then also how to think about spending in these areas, whether it's spending money or spending time, and really having more of a formulaic approach to thinking about how you spend on these things, rather than just looking at your profit and loss statement and saying, oh, it's the highest expense, maybe I should stop spending. Because I've seen people make a lot of mistakes in this area. And so I'm excited to jump in here.
Personally, I never spent money on marketing. I always thought I could work hard enough, spend all the necessary things, and just put in a lot of time and effort into my marketing. So I spent most of my time on my marketing efforts at the firm, and they worked. It all worked, but it was just a big use of my time that I spent testing things out, trying things, seeing what worked, what didn't. But it was always the slow roll. And we could have a whole episode on just marketing without spending any money, but we're trying to control your cash flow here. So for those that just want to throw money at the problem, we want to talk about, make sure you're throwing your money at the right things. and you're getting the right return on that too.
Yeah, usually when business first starts, like I remember when I first started my business, I spent the first 3 years just probably 60 to 70% of my time was networking, driving around San Francisco, driving around the Bay Area, meeting people for coffee, going to networking groups. And so that was a longer term strategy, right? Because now all of these years that I've spent networking have snowballed. And so now I have a constant referral pipeline. But that takes, even though that I wasn't spending money, I was spending my time as the owner going and doing that. So that's something that you will probably, in the beginning, will be a lot of sweat equity. And then as you start to build margin and you start to, you're moving into other areas of the business, you might be able to hire somebody to help you with some of these things, whether it be networking or social media or some other strategy. And we'll get into the strategies here in a minute. But the one thing we talked about in the first episode is this idea of not growing a crappy business. And so we want to, before we invest any any dollars into marketing, we need to make sure that we have enough margin where it makes sense, because we don't want to throw good dollars at bad.
Yeah. There is free ways to do marketing too. So we just want to be mindful that, and I'll probably chip in with all the free ways, because that was my whole thing at my firm. I never spent any money on marketing. So,
but is it free if you're spending your time?
It's true. That's very true. And that was my therein lies the problem, right? I thought it was free, but I was spending all of my time. So your time is valuable too. And at a certain point, the business owner doesn't need to be spending all their time in wearing every hat of the business. And you need to start taking some hats off, and spending some money on marketing is probably one of those ways to do it. So,
yeah, I usually find with owners, the marketing and sales are usually the last things that you take off your plate, especially in a service-based business. Usually your primary function as the owner is to bring a new business. And so if you can get to the point where you can hand off some of those things, obviously that's an ideal situation. Because the thing about networking, right, is it's not predictable and it takes a lot of time. So if we can get some marketing strategies in here that are predictable and profitable, that makes your business it makes your business more scalable, and two, it makes it more valuable if you ever go to sell it, because it's not relying on you as the owner to bring in the business.
For sure. Yeah. Let's start going through all of the different types of marketing and different ways that people go about this. What's one of the first ones? You were talking about networking.
Yeah, we're talking about networking. That's I honestly think networking is the fastest path to getting a client. Like if we're
What is networking, Nikole?
Oh, yeah. So networking is typically you're finding people that are servicing your clients. So your ideal clients. So for accountants like us, we may be networking with lawyers or CFOs or M&A consultants or HR people, anybody who might be working with other businesses where they would have a client that they're working with. Then they, like the networking group I'm a part of is called Provisors. And the whole idea is know, like, trust. And so you get to know people, you trust them, and then close.
You get to know people, you get to like them. Yeah,
you get to like them,
then you trust them.
Trust them. But the idea is, we all know that getting a warm referral from somebody is much easier to close than somebody coming from the internet or somewhere else, right? So that's the advantage of networking.
Let's clarify that. If they come from the internet, they could be warm too. If you've built a funnel, if you've built a sales funnel online, they're coming to you nice and warm. They know you already too.
Yeah. So the disadvantage of networking is it's one-to-one. But if we can take that same concept of getting people to trust us and like us, a strategy there might be social media. So I do a lot on LinkedIn and putting out videos and putting out my thoughts. And LinkedIn's a big lead generator for us. And it allows me to, one, stay in contact with people I've physically met in person, and two, grow an audience of people that have never met me in person and get them to trust me.
Yeah. So that's still fairly new as far as when you first started your business, your main primary way was going to those in-person events. Nowadays that you got all the different social platforms and everybody is online, pretty much every person in the world now is online and they have that access. Where are your customers going when they go online? find out where they are, where are your customers, and try to get in front of them. So whether it's Facebook groups or other communities online or other places, that's where you can show up. And it takes a lot less time to do that than to get in the car and drive out to that networking meeting. So you can go in and contribute there and do that. Find their watering holes. That doesn't typically cost a lot. It does cost you time though. So these networking is mostly a time-based cost.
Right. And social media too, I would say be aware what platforms are better for what you're selling. So for me, LinkedIn is very B2B, business to business, versus an Instagram might be good for a local business because you can target people who are locally easier and you're marketing to consumers. So it's just a different strategy depending on what platform you're on.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And also, where are your customers, what are they paying attention to? They could be in their email, in their inbox, and getting email newsletters. Pay attention to some of those newsletters, and maybe you can make your own, create a newsletter, and then use that as a tool. Is that another?
Yeah. So usually with social media, right, hopefully we can get people to sign up for a newsletter. So we're giving away free advice, showing our knowledge, and then that will make people, if you ask them, hey, if you want more of this exclusive, sign up for my newsletter. And then we're building an email list. And then also anybody, hopefully we're meeting in person or emailing with, we can also add them to our newsletter. And so it helps us stay in touch with people that we've met one time. Because one thing that I found with networking is you can spend all this time, drive across town and meet the person once and then never talk to them again. Well, as soon as I actually started using a newsletter, then I would get people that I met 5 years ago that I haven't talked to, that we forgot about each other, right? And so when people are buying, it's usually like, who's top of mind? Who do I see right now? Because we just want a quick, if somebody needs like an HR attorney or something, I'm like, who's the last person I talked to or saw? Because I just want to get them
through your mental,
I'm like, I know I've met 20 of these people over the year. Do I remember any of them? No. So it's always being top of mind, and then also giving away as much free.
Stay in front of people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, some of this, Nikole, should you suggest the owner does a newsletter themselves, or do they hire somebody to write a newsletter? What if they don't know the first thing about doing things like that?
Yeah, you can hire people to do newsletters for you. I personally like to repurpose content that I create. So LinkedIn is like my number one place where it's just an easy way for me to, if I have a thought or want to share something, a win that we've had with a client, I just go on there and freeform write, like almost like a mini blog, not even, very short blog basically on LinkedIn through a regular post. And then what I do is I take that content that I put on LinkedIn and I repurpose it in my newsletter. I also do a lot of.
And what are you writing on? So you said you write a post. Are you solving a problem? What's the post about?
Yeah, typically it's sometimes it's like a mini case study, like something we helped a client with. Sometimes it's just a general thought. Sometimes it's like a tip, some of the stuff that we do on Cash Flow Show, talking about, the first episode, I talked about a 50-30-20 rule. I just did a YouTube video on that, and I've done like a written post on what that means and how to think about that.
Okay. So creating content is a lot of and that's part of your top of funnel. And the content needs to be adding value for your customer. What is a problem that you solve as a business? How can you articulate that in a post or in other ways and deliver that and get in front of people? And the more problems that you solve as a business owner, and the more that you put that out there and the more you get in front of people, somebody's going to have that problem, and boom, you're right. You're already right there with that content in front of them. So getting a content strategy and putting that together is probably most important before you start toying around with all of these different things we're suggesting. I think you want to be very clear on what problems you're solving and what's your content strategy first, because you could do posts, you can do email newsletter, you can get in front of people in other ways, you can do podcasts, everything, you can set up an Instagram account. All of those things, if they're all kind of coordinated with, here's the problems I solve and here's the value I'm going to add, and you start giving that away, it comes back to you tenfold after you've built up that audience. Now, that does require a lot of time, or you can hire somebody, a marketing team, to help you come into your business, build up that content strategy, build up that funnel, and then, you may not need them forever. You could possibly hire somebody in-house, or you could start doing it too. But I think that's probably the place to start.
Yeah. And I think one mistake that I've seen people make, and I've made in the past, is people sharing tips about anything that they know about. But the problem with that, like, I have a tax background, I know a little bit about taxes, but I don't want to go share tax advice with my audience, because that's going to generate leads of people looking for tax help. The more customers you talk to, the more you'll start to recognize patterns of problems that they're having. And then also listening to the language they use. Like, I did a YouTube video on what does a controller do. And I started talking about, hey, do you feel like you need more mid-level support? Because I've had a couple people tell me that, like, I have a bookkeeper. I don't think I need a CFO. I need more mid-level support. And that's a word, like a term I never would have thought to use until, you start talking to prospects and customers and start using the terminology that they're using and the problems they're having. And then you talk about how you solve them and use the language.
You got to be obsessed with the customer and pay attention to what they're saying, so you can repeat those words and solve their problems. Because sometimes the business owner gets too stuck in their own world and they're too close to it, and they're using phrases and terms that the customer may not understand because they're insider terms. If you say the word CAS, a business owner may not know that, right? So you have to change the words that you use so they can understand it. So that's a good point.
Okay, so let's talk about another strategy, search engine optimization, or SEO. This was
SEO.
This was something like back when I was trying to figure out marketing. I didn't realize that at the time I hired a marketing agency to help me. Looking back, I know that they were an SEO agency, which is not a good fit for the type of work that we do. SEO. So basically, let's say,
well, it used to be. In the past, I optimized our SEO for our website to try to get more hits. So if people searched in Google, that we would come up. So if they searched for their problem and we had an article on that, we would come up. That kind of evolved over time, but that was what that's what search engine optimization is somebody searches for something and you have something on your website, and so your website comes up in the top of the search. Is that right?
Yeah, so the strategy with SEO is that you're creating content blog and you're using keywords. So for example, bookkeeper in San Francisco. If I wanted to show up when somebody searched that, I could write a bunch of articles using those keywords, right? And SEO is a long-term strategy. It can take up to a year to really 6 months to a year to start seeing results. So it's expensive because if you're paying somebody $4,000 or $5,000 a month to help you create the content, and a lot of times these blogs aren't very valuable. Like, these aren't blogs that are going to help you. It's mostly just throwing in as many keywords as you can. And there's a whole strategy to it. But what I realized later was like it is a strategy and it can work, right? A lot of people, accounting firms or other professional service businesses, get leads from SEO. But I will say, like, the higher dollar value your service or offering is, the harder that becomes, because usually, if it's a quick $50 purchase or $100 a month purchase, people are going to be okay with finding you on the internet and then paying for whatever they're buying. But if you're the type of business that is more like ours is, it's more consultative, it takes time to build trust. Most people are not searching online for that. They're actually going through a referral source or finding it. They want it. Not to say that you can't, but for us, it just wasn't the right strategy at that time.
One thing you said, though, was you said people may go online and search San Francisco accountant, right? Now, where do they usually go? Google?
Yeah.
Typically. So one thing that we did early on, the search engine optimization does take a lot of effort, a lot of work, and fixing up your website to get up there. But one thing that we found was on Google, the maps and the listed businesses took top priority. So SEO became less and less of a priority. And if you were listed in that area, so if you had your business location in San Francisco, then it was the maps and the business listings that showed up. So we made sure, how do we get on there? And we found out we weren't on there. So we had to go to Google, get a PIN number. They mail you a postcard in the mail. You put your physical address in. Once you get that, then you're confirmed. And now you're showing up on the map. And now it's up to your page, your map page or your Google map page as reviews. And that's where they're ranked. So if you're in San Francisco and you show up higher if you have more reviews. So that was what we aimed to do, was get as many customer reviews as we could. So over time, that takes a long time. And right now our firm has about 54 reviews, which is much more than any other accountant in our area.
Yeah.
So that's why we get a lot of inbound leads. And that was a strategy that took us years over time. So asking your clients for reviews is probably one of the best uses of your time. Again, that does take some time, but it's really just bottling up a compliment. If a customer gives you a compliment, turn that around and flip it over and ask them and say, can you leave us a Google review? That would pay your compliment forward. And now everybody else will see that too. So that's probably a good tip for our listeners, to start asking for reviews and make sure that you show up on Google.
If you have a Google location and there's a link directly to where people can leave, so make it easy on them. Take that link, send it to them, and just ask if they'll leave a review for you.
Mm-hmm.
A situation where SEO becomes really important is for types of businesses whose customers need to find you quickly. So, for example, like if you're a plumber, usually if someone needs a plumber, they need them very quickly, right? So the first thing that they're going to go do is search plumber San Francisco or wherever they live, right? And so those are situations where you want to show up at the top. And so that might be an SEO strategy, or it might be paying for Google Ads. So if you ever go search something, right, at the very top, you'll see all the businesses it says it's an ad. So they're actually paying to be up there. And then if you scroll down, the ones that don't say ads, those are the types of businesses that they're organically showing up at the top because of their reviews, because Google's saying like, hey, this is a website that is...
Well, it's sandwiched in between the maps is sandwiched in between that. So the natural results, and then typically the business listings in Google come up from the map. And then below that is just the natural SEO.
Yep.
Somewhere on there, the map shows up. And that's why we didn't want to pay for ads, because I never clicked the paid ads too.
Yeah,
so,
some people like ignore the ads, right? Because it's almost like a referral. If someone says, hey, I'm the best, I've paid money to be here, versus, I'm going to scroll down to the ones that are actually ranking organically because they've got good reviews, or people are actually visiting their website, or they've invested in SEO, basically, right?
Yep. And reviews go on a lot of different platforms. You could be listed on Yelp. You could be on Thumbtack. You can be on a lot of the other apps that your service business might be listed on. So make sure that you're asking for reviews across the board too. I found that in the beginning, we were asking for Yelp reviews and other places, but most of our customers weren't on there. Typically, you're looking for a restaurant on Yelp, maybe not an accountant. So find out where start asking your customers, if you haven't already, how they found you, and then ask for reviews in those places.
Yeah, good point.
Going back to the content strategy. So search engine optimization and maximizing your Google results is very important. And you can do that one of three ways. You can optimize on your website. You can do the ads. You can maximize your reviews and on the Google Maps. But what about creating content in other places too? So how about the cash flow show? That's content, right? This is what we're on right now. This is content. We're on a podcast player, we're also on YouTube, and we're creating this long form content that we can trim down and you can use on LinkedIn with the clips and other places. So that's one of the strategies, podcasts.
Yeah, the nice thing about podcasts, like especially this one we're doing right here, is it's evergreen. So we can reuse and repurpose these concepts, because most of them aren't going to change over time. Like you said, slice and dice them into smaller clips, put them wherever we want. So there's creating a podcast to build trust with your audience and to repurpose. And then there's also, you can be a guest on other people's podcasts. So if you have a niche in a certain industry or vertical, you can find out what types of people are doing podcasts with that audience that you want to get in front of, and try to get an opportunity to be on their podcast.
Yep. So get in front of people where they're at and what they're paying attention to. And if you find your customers are all listening to podcasts, find out which ones they're listening to and then go be a guest on that. Podcast hosts are always looking for guests and good, interesting content. So typically, if you go ask around, you can become a guest. Go get yourself a mic and practice. Don't be worried about what people are going to think of you. All right. That's the last thing. They're not thinking of you. They're thinking of how you can solve their problem. So Don't get in your own way and worry that you need to get the best microphone and the best, you need to look your best. You probably should look okay, but make sure that you just have a setup that's functional first, because your people are not thinking about you as much as you think they are. So get over yourself. That's one piece of advice I could give, because that's what my problem was. For years, I wouldn't do anything because I was too self-conscious.
Yeah. I'd say also, if you're afraid to go on a podcast or do a video, just get your phone out and take a video of yourself, and practice is the best way to start. And then
Practice.
Yeah, because then you watch the video and you're like, well, that wasn't so bad. But a lot of people are afraid to get on camera. But like, even a lot of the videos that I put, all the videos that I put up on LinkedIn and YouTube is just me and my camera, taking a video of myself. And I mean, I wasn't comfortable doing that 4 years ago, but I just started doing it. And then over time, you just get more comfortable and more comfortable. So kind of just got to get over it and do it. It is what it is.
It gets easier over time. Yeah. But it still takes a lot of time. Remember, like a lot of these tips that we're giving you are time costly too. They're going to cost you some time. If you're on that sweat equity phase of the business, those are the things you should be doing. Build up your foundation, build up the content strategy. So lots of different ways to do this. Podcasts, definitely. Getting in front of influencers. So are there influencers in your industry? What's an influencer, Nikole?
Oh, I can give you an example of some influencers. So I watch a lot of cat videos on Instagram. And it's funny because like I'll see these, like this one guy, I forget his name, but it's just like him and his orange cat, and it's just random stuff that he does all day.
So
it's
Garfield's
so
an influencer?
It's not a Garfield. His cat's name is Kurt, but I mean, this guy has like probably over 1 million followers now. So he starts out making silly cat videos, right? And then all of a sudden he's got millions of people watching his videos. So then you'll start seeing him advertising for Chewy or advertising for PetSmart or a cat product, and then so he's making money now off of other people's products. But that's an example of influencer marketing where someone has a lot of eyeballs on them, and then other brands will pay for that person to promote their product because they've built trust. And so their audience trusts them. So as soon as they say, hey, use this product, people are more willing to buy it because they built that trust.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So find out who those influencers are. Be one of those influencers. If you think you have that in you, you can try to become one of those influencers. It might distract you from your business. So beware of how much of an impact that could make. But how about some of the other social platforms? So you've got YouTube content. You can make videos, and podcasts can be videos as well. And then there's also TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat and Facebook and Twitter. How do you decide which ones to go on or where to put your content?
Well, I think like for me, I probably wouldn't advertise on TikTok because that tends to be a younger demographic that's on that app, right? And so just understanding who your ideal client profile is. Most of our customers are over 40. They've owned a business for a while. So that's probably not going to be.
Be careful with those
Gen Zer.
assumptions. TikTok is being used by everybody now. A lot of people are going to look stuff up on TikTok. I'm more and more hearing people saying, oh yeah, I found that on TikTok now. That's like becoming the new thing. There's all kinds of videos on there. I'm wasting a lot of time on there just trying to figure out what it is, because it's not just kids dancing anymore. You got people like grooming their horses on there and doing all sorts of things. People just like with their live streams and stuff. So try to ask, again, do another client survey or ask your clients what they're paying attention to, because it could be TikTok. You may have aged yourself, Nix. You may need to get on TikTok.
I might be aging myself. I think the key here though is to choose.
I'm 40. I don't go on TikTok, but
yeah, no, I think the key is to choose one and master it. Don't try to spread yourself thin and do a whole bunch. Just start with one.
Yeah. Don't make any assumptions about any of these first, but find out which one is going to give you, maybe which one you're the most comfortable with and where most of your people are, and just pay attention to one for now. for the beginning until you start to master it and you've turned that into a system as part of your funnel. Then you can start paying attention to the others. I just wanted to make sure that like you could get overwhelmed if you think about, oh, now I need to get out there and get in front of everybody, because there's so many different ways to do that.
Definitely.
And then there's in-person events, going back to the in-person aspect of this, back when we were talking about networking. Conferences too are in person. You could find out where your clients or customers are going and pay to sponsor a conference, or you can just show up and do some guerrilla marketing.
Yeah, we see that a lot in our community, right? When people are first starting up, they're typically just coming, they're wearing their shirt, they're hanging out with us, but they're not paying for a booth. Then there's some that are sponsoring some of the parties. So you'll get like 4 apps that will get together and say, hey, let's host a party after our party, not after our hours, but after the conference party. The after hours are sponsored by our good buddies that have a Divvy card or something. But anyway, that's one way that they're sponsoring events. And then you can actually buy a booth at the conference. And so I know whenever I go around at the conference and you talk to somebody, you have your little lanyard, and they always want to scan your badge because they're trying to get your email address so that they can market to you after the fact. And so that's a good way to collect emails, because once you get the email, then you can market to those people indefinitely.
Showing up at conferences is probably a really good idea if your customers are going to conferences, if that's a place for them to go to learn. And that is a great way for you to network and meet people and find others like you too, because potentially you can go to other conferences and learn a lot from other business owners that are similar to you.
Yeah, and even like in our accounting community, right? Most referrals I give away are to other accountants, and I get a lot of referrals from accountants that are doing something. We're all in the same community, but we're doing stuff a little bit differently. So most of your leads will probably come from people in your community. So that's a good way to meet other people that are doing something similar.
So now let's talk about paid things. So a lot of the strategies we talked about, there are paid options. So paid ads on socials is another way. So why don't you lay out the foundation of your marketing, the analogy we were going to talk about?
Yeah, so we just talked about a lot of different strategies. And so marketing is one of those things where it's not as straightforward of like, you should spend 3% on accounting.
Which we talked about on another episode, but yeah.
Yeah, it's more of an investment in future revenue. And so it was funny because before this episode, I was like, oh, I'm just going to Google search how much you spend on marketing to see what's out there on the internet. And one guy was like, you should spend 45% of your revenue on marketing. And one guy was like, you should spend 5% of your revenue on marketing. And so it's all over the place. So, the way I think about it is some of these regular activities that you should be doing, like networking, posting on social media, having a newsletter. These are all things that I would say are just more like marketing hygiene. So you may not get a dollar for dollar result, right? Like if you send out a newsletter, you may not get a client from that, but you may be sending out a newsletter for 2 years to somebody before they decide, hey, I trust you now, I'm ready to buy, and they reach out. So some of these activities are more of just like long-term of building your brand. And then there are other activities like spending money on a Instagram ad or doing cold calling that you can actually quantify what you're spending versus what your return on that spend. And if anybody's ever spent money on Instagram ads or Facebook ads, they've probably, you have to be really careful because you can end up lighting a lot of money on fire. And so
it's like going to the casino.
It can be, right? And so we need to first understand what is the value of one customer, and not just like the one-time value, but the actual lifetime value of a customer. So Scott, for you and I, for our business, we have recurring revenue, right? So let's say we close a new client for $1,000 a month. And on average, our clients stay with us for 2 years. So that would be, what would be the lifetime revenue of that client?
24,000.
24,000. Okay, so then the question is how much are we willing to spend in order to get $24,000 in revenue?
Yeah. I mean, I think our clients stay longer than 2 years, so that lifetime value could be a lot higher. But yeah, for
I'm
this
just using that as an example. Yeah.
how much should we spend to get that 24,000? Is that the question?
That's the question. Yeah.
I mean, I think we got to go back to our earlier episodes and talk about that 24,000 isn't all our it's just revenue, right? So we may only be taking home 20% of that as our profit, or half of that if you want to consider our gross profit, our margins. Yeah.
Exactly. So if that 24,000, 12,000 already out the door in delivering the services, right? If we go back to our 50, 30, 20 rule, we've already spent 50% of that on just delivering it. Then we've got another 30% that we're spending on overhead costs. Now, overhead costs are generally fixed, but they do go up in sort of a stair stepper. You know, it's not like your direct costs that tend to go up as your revenue goes up. So, but we still need to consider it, right? Because as you add on more revenue, your overhead needs are going to go up. Like you said, we may only see to our bottom line 20% of that 24,000. And so we can't just say, oh, if I spend $12,000 and I get $24,000, that's a good return. We actually need more like a 1 to 5. So if you spend $1 on an ad, $1 in marketing, we should be getting at least a 5 times return for it to make sense to do because of all the costs that we need to consider.
That's to keep in mind for any of those marketing techniques that we discussed, is start paying attention to what's your return on this? How many clients are you getting? If you're spending money on all of them, the ones that take time, you can sink a whole lot of time into something that doesn't work. Be mindful of that too. That's sort of like spending a lot of money on some marketing that doesn't work. If you spend a whole lot of time and you're not seeing any results, reevaluate that. Same thing as if you're spending money. I don't know rule of thumb on how much time you should spend on things, but I think this rule of thumb is the 1 to 5, or the 5 times the rowers should be 5 times your spend. I think that's good.
Yeah, and I like to think of it as like, so we go back to the 50, 30, 20, right? So we've got 30% of our revenue to spend on overhead. So if we say, I'm going to allocate like 4% of that, 4% of revenue, call it, for just those ongoing type of hygiene things as a stable recurring spend. And then the other, Google ads or things that you can clearly quantify the return, those you might think of separately because those are a clear investment. As long as because if you can invest $1 and get $10 back every single time, like why would you not keep bringing the cash machine? Of course, like you're going to invest unlimited unless your delivery team can't handle that type of volume, right? Or you sell out of that product. So it's all about balancing what you're willing to invest in marketing versus what you actually can deliver.
For sure. This is great. Yeah. Lots of good marketing tips today. Thank you, Nix. Anything else that we want to discuss or go over?
No, I think that's it. Probably all the marketing people listening to this right now are going to be rolling their eyes at this, us trying to give marketing tips. Just giving our firsthand experience. But yeah, this is good.
Yeah. Well, if you're a marketing person and you have some advice for us or you would like to hop on the show, check us out. You can find us on LinkedIn, connect with us. Yeah, maybe you can contribute to the Cash Flow Show if there's something that we probably need to further clarify. But I think this is good tips. For the general business owner, I think, we've been doing this long enough. We've learned a lot over the years and we know of the good marketing techniques, but it's different for every business. We're just assuming most businesses that would probably be listening to this are service-based, and we're talking with the eye of a service-based business. So,
yep.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for tuning in to the Cash Flow Show. Peace out.
All right. See ya.
Class
Check
dismissed.
out the Cash Flow Show. We discuss topics like getting paid on time, profitability, and managing your bottom line, payroll best practices, the best apps to use, and cash flow forecasting tools. So if you're a small business owner, your help's right around the corner. Fret not. Tune in as Scott and Nikole help you reach your goals on the Cash Flow Show. The Cash Flow Show.